the success of The Exorcist, it stands to reason that you were going to get a slew of demonic and devil worship style movies. And in 1975 we got The Devil's Reign, notable for actually a pretty star-studded cast. Ernest Borgnine, Tom Skerritt, William Shatner, and even small roles for John Travolta and Anton LaVey, who actually is the founder of the Church of Satan in real life and actually helped as a consultant on the movie. So the story of this one, if we can kind of disseminate the somewhat confused plot, focuses on this kind of satanic cult led by Ernest Borgnine's character. And we have a family that seems to be tied to this kind of particular kind of priest and of devil worship, and they have got this kind of book that is very important to Ernest Borgnine's character, and they're kind of hiding it from him. And William Shatner is one of the members of the family who tries to confront Ernest Borgnine's character and ultimately becomes his servant. And then it's up to his brother Tom Skerritt to try and find out what's going on, and this leads to lots of gooey shenanigans. Okay, so let's talk about what works in this movie's favour. Now, it's a good cast. Now, some of these obviously were before they were kind of more mainstream, but John Travolta, only a very, very small part, to be honest with you. You probably won't even recognise him because he's got a lot of makeup on. But it's a decent kind of cast. And I've got to say, Ernest Borgnine really is quite menacing in this role, I have to say. You know, I think when you think of Ernest Borgnine, he always tends to play quite sort of jolly characters in many respects. But here he seems genuinely quite menacing in a sort of, maybe not physical way, but just this kind of presence that I think he kind of, that he brings across. You know, so I've got to say I kind of quite like the cast, and I mean Shatner's always fun to watch. I mean, he's not as over the top sometimes as he sometimes is, but there's still elements there. So this has got, you know, some kind of fun sort of moments from its cast. What I would say as well is the movie is has quite a lot of interesting kind of imagery and iconography. Primarily what you might remember here is some of the kind of the gooey VFX. Lots of kind of body melting style effects at the beginning and towards the end of the movie, where we effectively have characters kind of melting into sludge, and it's done in a quite a gooey and fun way, and possibly a little disgusting. But I've got to say, for the time, I think it's pretty effective. And just the kind of things like this set decoration, the kind of the props, all this kind of stuff. I mean, again, you had Anton LaVey as a consultant here, so you probably have a degree of authenticity for a large part. But it's pretty impressive, and some of the kind of just a little attention to details here, like we have all these kind of acolytes have like different pendants on. I was noticing, so there's quite a lot of little elements here that I just think this will make this movie kind of interesting. And then the movie is kind of entertaining in some respects. Now, it's not the best narratively, which we're going to come on to, but you know, you can't help but be a little bit entertained by it. And I got to say, I think some of the decisions here that are taken with the story don't make a lot of sense narratively, and we'll come on to that, as I say. But, you know, it was a swing. For example, the movie kind of starts off almost like you're part way through the story, and you don't really know what's kind of going on, and then it tries to kind of backfill the story as it kind of goes along, going to give you some more context about what you're seeing really. And it's a risky move, and I think it was certainly an interesting way to go. So I kind of sort of respect it for that to a degree. I don't think it necessarily works, but I respect the attempt, and you know, it has a sort of cheesiness to it that I think if you want a more serious, like, you know, demonic devil worship movie, watch The Omen, watch The Exorcist. This one kind of strays more into a kind of a B movie, schlocky kind of style affair. Maybe not consciously, but that's kind of how it feels. But because of that, it has a more of a sort of silliness to it, cheesiness to it, but ultimately somewhat of a fun element to it. So let's talk about what doesn't work. And the big thing, as I kind of alluded to here, is the story is very, very confused. Primarily when we start the movie off, you kind of almost start partway through a conversation with William Shatner and his kind of immediate kind of family, or his character's family. You don't really know what's going on. They're kind of almost like you. It's like you've missed out 20 minutes of the movie. Because they are clearly associated with this kind of satanic sect, but you don't really know what's kind of going on. They seem to know a little bit about what's going on, and it's kind of like, what's the what? And so you kind of got to just kind of go along with it, really, and try and pick up clues as the movie goes on. But I've got to say, I mean, for the risks that this movie takes in trying to kind of save some of these reveals for later, the risk is that you're kind of losing with your audience, because it's just a little confusing, to be honest, because you don't really know what you're watching. So the decision here to have some kind of like element to the plot kind of be referred to later, I don't think helps the movie overall, because it ultimately becomes, you just don't know really what you're watching and who these characters are and why do they care and what are they up to. You won't know unless you've either read about it or kind of like watched the movie and we're watching it for a second time. So the movie doesn't really bring you on for the ride. And also I think the movie kind of flip-flops in regards to a main character, because initially you're sort of following William Shatner's character, then it's kind of like Ernest Borgnine's character kind of takes centre stage, and it's kind of Tom Skerritt's character, and then we have elements of other characters that sort of come in, and it never really feels particularly kind of focused at any one point, and just kind of like just kind of flip flops in regards to its kind of narrative. There are scenes here that I just think go on too long, and ultimately you're thinking, I get where you're going, kind of let's move on, and it just outstays its welcome on kind of certain scenes. And I think the movie, because it feels so unfocused, you never really connect with anyone. And as I said, the movie has this kind of silliness to it, this kind of cheesiness, and there are some effects which are not good, even for 70s standards. I think the kind of the melting effects look pretty good, but we have Ernest Borgnine in this kind of like Ram Man style. I don't mean the He-Man character. I mean the kind of like demonic sort of style character. It don't look good. It reminds me of like Monkey from Monkey Magic. It's like it's not good. And then we have this kind of the Devil's Reign sort of artifact style thing, and it's again. I appreciate it's a mid-70s movie, but it doesn't look good, even for then. So it's the effects are a mixed bag, and you've got to think of what was around at this point. Obviously, we'd had The Exorcist. Star Wars was a couple of years away. It was like, there was stuff that could have been done a little better, I feel. So overall, this movie is sort of a fun watch. It's not really, certainly not a classic movie in my estimation. It kind of falls pretty much at a bang average for me. So it's a 5 out of 10. What were your thoughts if you've seen it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Fear of missing out? Subscribe to Geek Legion of Doom now.